Good morning. My name is Jim Creamer, and you're listening to Mortgage Savvy Radio, the show that keeps you informed and helps you make better decisions when it comes to purchasing or financing your home. Our special guest today is Kirk Rose. He's a former professional golfer and trainer of the national golf team of Chile. He prepared the national men's and women's teams for World Cup play. He's also an FHA DE underwriter. We'll explain what that means a little bit later. We're also going to do something a little bit different today. We're going to include him on some of the segments as we move through the show. We'll get his input on what's going on in the mortgage world. Kirk, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Jim. I'm very excited to be here.
We also have another great featured property today with an open house that's actually tomorrow on Sunday. The open house is between 12 and 5 p.m. We'll tell you about that property later on in the program, but if you can't wait, and you want to check it out right now, you can go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/swiftloans, where you'll find pictures, website links, and contact information. Be sure to post your listener questions on our Facebook page at facebook.com/swiftloans or send an email to radio@jimcreamer.com. We want to read your question on the air, and if we do, we'll send you a nice gift from one of our local shops here in the Newport Mesa area. Let's take a look at what the markets did this last week. We always start with the Freddie Mac rate survey for the week. Freddie Mac says the average 30-year fixed rate was 3.66%. That's up again slightly from 3.62% the previous week and 3.59% the week before that. The average 15-year fixed rate, according to Freddie Mac, was 2.89%, also up slightly over last week's 2.88%. In addition to that, the cost for both of those loans, according to Freddie Mac, was 0.7% in lender fees. That's almost 3/4 of a point in lender fees. That's also up. Stay tuned, though, because we're going to talk about the Swift Loan Funding 30 and 15-year fixed rate. And although Freddie Mac's survey shows rates higher, we actually have had a rate drop over the last few days. August, not a good month for interest rates. We saw a huge sell-off in bonds that caused prices to fall and rates to go up. The last 2 weeks especially weren't fun, but finally, as I'd hoped, rates bounced back this week, and over the last few days, rates have actually improved significantly. Part of the rate improvement has to do with a correction that typically goes along with these wild swings in bond prices. However, on Wednesday, the FOMC minutes, the Federal Open Market Committee, they're the ones that make the key decisions about interest rates and the growth of the money supply. The FOMC minutes were released from their August 1st meeting, and they had strong wording towards the likelihood of QE3. That rallied bonds, and that's why rates near the end of the week actually got significantly better. After last week's show, I'll be honest, I was a little worried about the refi boom being over. I guess it's because rates have actually been so good that I always worry a little bit about when it will end. But as I always say when we do rate analysis for borrowers, the numbers don't lie. And the numbers in this case didn't lie. The trends don't lie either. Remember, rates are still good and will hopefully improve over the short term. So the Swift Loan funding rates. The Swift Loan funding 30-year fixed right now is 3.5% APR. That's with zero closing costs. And last week, I think I told you it was 3.625, so it's come down. Also, the 15-year fixed is 2.875 at zero cost. I think last week I said it was 2.99%. So again, that's coming down too. In fact, at those rates currently, lenders will even pay you a premium to take the rate. You can apply that premium to interest, and you can apply that premium to principal. It's actually quite a nice incentive, and it also shows that rates may drop back a little bit more if we're lucky. You can go ahead and actually check for yourself. Our company website at swiftloanfunding.com has a live rate engine that ties directly to our wholesale lender rate sheets. You can use the Fast Quote tab on swiftloanfunding.com, enter your qualifications, and the resulting rates are actually the latest live lender rates with all possible closing costs already factored in. So, Kirk, we're going to actually do something a little bit differently this week. Normally we have listener questions at about this time in the show. I'm going to mix that in with our interview today, if you don't mind, because I want to tap on your experience here, and hopefully you can help me answer some of these questions. First, though, the DE underwriter designation, How do you go about getting that, and what does it mean when you have a DE underwriter designation from FHA?
Well, in order to approve FHA loans, every underwriter must qualify for specific standards set by the local HOC or homeownership center. In this instance, I underwrote 10 files that were test cases for FHA to be approved. The DE is a direct endorsement which allows me to approve loans on behalf of the FHA.
That basically is a designation of your expertise and a stamp of approval from FHA that allows you to underwrite loans on behalf of the FHA.
That is correct.
Okay, that's great. So maybe that qualifies you for helping me answer the next question. Let's say you have a couple that wants to refinance. A lot of times we see these refis coming in where one of the spouses maybe doesn't have a job or their income has decreased significantly over the past couple of years as a result of the economy and that type of thing. And they have this idea that they should come in and one spouse should be on the loan, the other spouse should not be on the loan, but they should both stay on title. What do you think is better? You think it's better that they both stay on the loan together and both stay on title, or one comes off?
Well, for FHA in particular, because we're in a community property state here in California, regardless of if there's one borrower or two, let's just say that there was one borrower, a married spouse, that spouse is still going to be qualified with the non-borrowing spouse's debt per FHA guidelines.
So FHA works that way. You can't get around tricking the system by taking one person off.
No, in conventional underwriting, you would be able to utilize that, but in FHA, that's not a possibility.
But let's say it didn't make a difference in terms of qualifying. Would it make a difference in terms of the structure of the loan to keep one person off or keep them on?
No.
I just wanted to talk about locking in your interest rate. One of the misunderstandings that we come across on a daily basis is a borrower will see a rate that we publish, and then they'll call us up and say, hey, I'm looking at this rate I see online, or I see, I hear on on advertising somewhere. I'd like to lock that rate in, please. And it's not exactly that easy as just saying, okay, I'll lock that rate in for you right now, because the lenders that we're locking our loans with, they don't take anonymous locks. They actually want to know something about the customer that they're locking. It costs them money to lock these loans. So they want to know that the borrower who they're locking the loan for actually does qualify for the loan. So what we tell our customers is to get into a ready position to lock. You don't actually have to lock as soon as you provide your paperwork. What we're encouraging people to do is, first of all, get comfortable with the loan originator you're choosing to do business with. Once you've found that person or that company, then fill out the application, get them over all of the paperwork that they're asking for. Have them tidy things up for the underwriter. Make sure that you're in a position to lock, and that's what we're calling the ready position. So once you're in that position, you can make that phone call to your loan originator and lock at a moment's notice. That way you're in a position to track the market. You're planning ahead, and locking in your rate is as simple as a phone call. The other thing I wanted to mention when it comes to locking in your interest rate is that not all lenders are created equal, meaning that if you're working with a good loan originator, they know and will advise you of the personalities of each of these lenders. Some lenders will offer 30-day locks, 21-day locks, yet they're not able to perform within that lock period. It's a little bit misleading. Borrowers find that they end up getting caught up in the slight discounts that are associated with shorter-term locks, but due to the high volume of refinances, for example, that we have going on right now, lenders are just overburdened with business, and they are oftentimes not able to meet some of these lock periods. It's good that your loan originator knows the personality of that particular lender that you've chosen to work with, so that you're locking with a time frame that's appropriate to that lender's ability to perform. Oftentimes, especially these days, it's usually at least a 30-day lock, up to as much as a 45-day lock. But knowing the personality of that lender is very, very important. Just because you see a great price doesn't mean you'll be able to get that price. Sometimes what happens if it goes past the lock expiration date, the lender will usually extend the lock for you for free, but their preference is to not do that. So if for some reason the lock goes past the expiration and any of that reason for the expiration occurring has to do with you, the borrower, or even your broker, that lender's not going to extend the lock for you, and you might find that you're out of that great rate that you'd initially locked at, and you're faced with a rate that's not as desirable. In your opinion, Kirk, where do you think the market's going? I'm on here every week. I'm talking about where I think the market's going. Where do you think interest rates are going to be going in the near term?
Well, from everything that I'm reading, it looks like we're still got a couple of months ahead of us at good interest rates, but I did read some forecasts yesterday that said towards the end of the year, November and December, to expect the yields on the bonds to be much higher.
Do you think that has something to do with the election?
It's quite possible. We are in an election year, and traditionally, if we look back in our history, we always have some kind of kickback right after an election.
So, Kirk, as you're reviewing files and watching the regulations change in regards to how files are reviewed and underwritten, what do you see in terms of documentation requirements by these lenders?
Well, it's definitely changed in the last 5 years since the downturn in the markets. Now that we're back to basically just full doc, meaning that you have to provide some type of income documentation throughout the file. For some people, it's gotten much more stringent. However, this is basically, we're back to the beginning of how lending started. We always had to provide some kind of income information, some asset information, and be able to qualify with your credit score.
Speaking of work, how did you get into the mortgage business?
Well, in 2000, I retired from golf and had to find a job. Just so happens that my family has been in either the real estate market or the mortgage arena for my whole life. My father actually owned a bank. One time at a family reunion, we started looking around the table, and of 28 adults, 26 were licensed brokers.
You have actually a very good mind for the mortgage business. What I've noticed is that you tend to memorize and retain all of the intricate guidelines that are published out there, and I guess maybe not all of them, but a good chunk of those guidelines. If we ever need to know a guideline, you're good with the guidelines.
Well, I think that comes from, I want to be able to remember that stuff from the guidelines because some of it can be kind of confusing, just so I can help my borrowers. That's one of the neat things, that the reason that I've stayed in the mortgage business actually is because I like to help people, and I like to help people in a very important situation where they may not face this but once or twice in their lifetimes, refinancing or purchasing of a home. Doing it on a daily basis, I feel like I can, by knowing the guidelines, I can help more borrowers achieve their dreams.
I think by knowing the guidelines, when you are presented with a situation that's a little bit unusual, you can actually lend assistance where somebody else might actually think that borrower won't qualify.
And that is absolutely true. Having knowledge of both agency guidelines and as well as different investors' guidelines, I can usually find a home for just about every loan.
Yeah, I think that helps you to stand out from your competition and the things that you're able to do for people. Thank you for that. I want to talk a little bit more now about golf, because I'm a horrible golfer. And I always hear how great of a golfer you are. Not from you. Well, maybe sometimes from you, but I actually hear from other people how good of a golfer you are. How did you discover that you were actually a pretty good golfer?
Well, how I got into golf was I was actually playing baseball for a high school team at San Clemente High School, and had a little altercation.